Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today I will analyze the case of Linda Stermer. First I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the crime, then offer my analysis. Linda K. Stermer was born on November 16, 1964, and lived in Lawrence, Michigan. She married, had two daughters named Brittany and Ashley, and divorced. In 1989, Linda met a man named Todd Joseph Stermer. He had been born on November 22, 1964, so he was 6 days younger than Linda. The couple became romantically involved and had two sons named Trenton and Trevor. Later, they also raised Linda's nephew named Corey. On August 7, 1993, Linda and Todd married. Eventually, they moved into a house which was under construction, but the foundation for financial ruin was already fully built. Linda had 31 horses on the property, which led to equine-facilitated financial distress. The couple's finances were not just strained, they were galloping straight to the glue factory. Linda refused to rein in her expenses. As if the couple did not have enough problems, Linda allegedly started having an affair with a coworker named Chris Williams. Now moving to the timeline of the crime. On January 7, 2007, at about 3:30 p.m., law enforcement was notified that the Stermer family house was on fire. When the police arrived, they discovered 42-year-old Todd Stermer dead next to his house. His cause of death was a combination of thermal injuries and smoke inhalation. He had sustained blunt force injuries to his head as well, but they were not fatal. Here is the story that Linda supplied to the police. Earlier that day, Linda and Todd argued about finances. Afterward, Linda went to a gas station, put gasoline in her Chevrolet Blazer, and bought breakfast. After returning to her house, Linda told her sons to leave because she needed to talk to Todd. Linda went into the basement to do laundry as Todd was on the first floor. During this time, he was yelling at her from the living room, but then he started screaming in pain. Linda ran upstairs to find Todd on fire. She went outside and climbed into the family van in order to get help. The keys were always in this van. Linda said that after entering the van, she started to back down the driveway, but then she saw Todd outside the house. He was still covered in flames. She exited the van and tried to get him to lie down, but there was nothing she could do to help him. She decided it would be better to continue in her effort to get help. When Linda climbed back into the van, she realized that she could not back up because it was stuck in the mud. To get the van free, she drove forward instead. She noticed Todd was no longer on fire and once again exited the van to help him. Neighbors saw smoke and flames coming from the Stermer family house and drove over to help. They found that Todd was severely burned and unresponsive. He was only wearing socks and a pair of sweatpants, which were down around his ankles. The police discovered that on January 6th, the day before Todd Stermer died, he confronted Linda because he believed she was having an affair with her coworker Chris. Todd told Linda he wanted a divorce. The next day, January 7, Linda did drive to a gas station as she indicated, but her intent may not have been to buy gasoline for her Chevrolet Blazer. An attendant saw Linda pumping gas into the back of the vehicle as if she was filling a gas can. In the front yard of Linda's house, the police found a 1-gallon gas can. The police examined the Stermer family van, the one that Linda climbed into during the fire. On the front bumper and on the undercarriage, they found Todd's blood. They believed that Linda ran over Todd after he was set on fire. On June 5, 2009, about 2.5 years after Todd Stermer died, Linda Stermer was arrested and charged with premeditated murder and felony murder in the course of committing arson. The state believed that Linda sedated Todd or rendered him unconscious by striking him with a blunt object. She then doused him in gasoline and set him on fire. As Todd was trying to escape from the fire, Linda ran him over with the van. In January 2010, Linda Stermer was convicted on both charges and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In December 2018, her conviction was overturned on appeal. The court identified a few reasons why Linda did not get a fair trial. For example, the prosecution had engaged in misconduct by claiming that Linda had two cell phones, but there was no evidence to support this claim. And Linda's defense attorney used a bad strategy by assuming that Todd Stermer intentionally set the fire that killed him. He did not present the possibility that this was an accidental fire. Linda was released on a $10,000 bond as she awaited her second trial. On March 27, 2025, the trial started. On April 11 of the same year, Linda Stermer was convicted of first-degree premeditated murder and first-degree felony murder. She is scheduled to be sentenced on May 19, 2025, when she will face a mandatory term of life in prison without the possibility of parole. Now moving to my analysis. Linda Stermer maintains her innocence, and she has a fair number of supporters, including her daughters. Some of her supporters point out that the cause of the fire could not be determined. If Linda did not set the fire, there was no murder. The state, of course, disagrees. They argue that running Todd over with the van demonstrated that Linda intended to kill him. This brings me to the question, was Linda Stermer guilty of murder? Let's take a look at the evidence both for and against the idea that she was guilty, starting with the inculpatory factors. Linda was allegedly having an affair, and she and her husband were having serious financial problems. On the day of the fire, Linda went to a gas station and appeared to fill a gas can. A 1-gallon gas can was found in the front yard of her house. Right before the fire, Linda told her sons to leave the house in her Chevrolet Blazer. She was eager to get rid of them and even physically prevented them from saying goodbye to their father, stating that Todd was asleep. Not long after this, Todd Stermer caught on fire. Gasoline was found on his clothing. Instead of calling for help, Linda climbed in a van and started backing out of her driveway. She then put the vehicle in drive and ran over her husband. When neighbors arrived at the property to offer assistance, they noticed that Linda was laying on Todd with her hands on his face. At this point, he was struggling to breathe, so being on top of him seemed like an unusual tactic. Linda had to be forcibly removed from her husband twice. Prior to the fire, pictures of Linda's children had been moved to the shed, and Linda let her dogs outside. It's almost like she knew the fire was coming. Linda offered different stories about what happened on the day of Todd's death. In one version of her story, she walked upstairs during the fire, saw Todd Stermer on fire, and exited the house through the front door. In another version, she exited directly from the basement through the walkout. Linda repeatedly suggested that the fire could have started in an oil furnace, apparently not realizing that home heating oil is different than gasoline. Linda's son said that Linda asked them to lie to insurance investigators. 2 jailhouse informants claimed that Linda made inculpatory statements to them. Linda's former coworker, Kate, claimed that Linda talked about killing Todd, including running him over with a motor vehicle. Now moving to the exculpatory factors, Linda Stermer denied having an affair. She admitted to being romantically involved with Chris Williams, but said the relationship started after Todd Stermer's death. The state's theory of the crime was that Linda drugged Todd or beat him into unconsciousness. There was no evidence that Todd was drugged. He did have injuries to his head consistent with being beat, but they could have been caused by the van when Linda ran him over. Todd had gasoline on his clothing, but Linda's clothing did not have gasoline on them. How did she pour gasoline on her husband without getting any on her? Prior to the fatal fire, the police suspected Todd Stermer of committing arson. 2 of his homes had burned down mysteriously during times when he had severe financial problems. When he died, his financial situation was desperate. The state was unable to prove that the fire that killed Todd Stermer was set intentionally. This could have just been an accident. Linda did not have a strong financial motive to commit murder. For example, she knew that the homeowner's insurance policy had lapsed and believed there would be no insurance payout. During the fire, Linda ran out of the house without a coat or shoes. If this was a planned murder, why didn't she prepare better? Linda may have run her husband over with the van, but this did not cause his death. It's possible that she struck him by accident during the confusion caused by the fire. Jailhouse informants have zero credibility and should never be trusted by any jury under any circumstances whatsoever. Linda's former coworker, Kate, had mental health problems and may not have been a credible witness. When considering all the evidence in this case, Do I believe that Linda Stermer was guilty of murder? Yes, I am convinced of her guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. The primary problem for Linda's defense was how she ran Todd over with the van. This didn't kill him, but it demonstrated that Linda wanted to kill him. What do I think happened in this case? This is just a theory, my opinion. Linda Stermer probably was having an affair with Chris Williams. This infidelity supplied her with a motive to kill her husband, Todd Stermer. She and her husband did not get along even before the alleged affair. Linda had 31 horses on the property, which was an expensive hobby. People described Linda as obsessed with the horses. When combining her liberal spending habits with Todd Stermer's irresponsible financial decisions, the couple was doomed. On January 7, 2007, Linda decided that she had enough. Her plan was to kill Todd using fire because he may have used arson as a tool to obtain money in the past. Perhaps investigators would think Todd had simply set another fire to get out of financial trouble. Linda went to a gas station, filled a gas can, and returned to her house. Even though it was not detected in the autopsy, Linda must have somehow sedated her husband. After this, she doused him with gasoline, set him on fire, and climbed into the van. As she was backing up the driveway, Linda noticed that Todd was walking outside, even as the flames consumed him. From Linda's point of view, Todd Stermer probably seemed almost invincible, like the Terminator, or perhaps the Sterminator. She drugged him and set him on fire, but he would not die. In utter disbelief and panicked, Linda asked herself, what is it going to take to kill this man? As it turns out, Todd was mortally wounded, but Linda did not know that. She thought he could survive. And, of course, if he did, he was going to mention how Linda set him on fire. It probably would have been the first topic to come up in his discussion with investigators, mostly because of the murder part. Linda could not let this happen. She stopped the van, shifted from reverse to drive, and gave her husband a high-velocity introduction to the bumper. If Linda had not run Todd over, there would have been reasonable doubt as to her guilt. Striking her husband with the van was her primary mistake as far as escaping responsibility. Linda was fortunate to have her first conviction overturned, but she could not escape justice for a second time. Reportedly, she married a man just weeks before her second conviction. It would appear as though her new husband bet on the wrong horse, but at least they did not have a fiery breakup. Those are my thoughts in the case of Linda Stermer. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you soon.